1874, the podcast with Dan Bardell and Greg Evans.
Hello, welcome back to 1874, the podcast. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletic's Jacob Tanswell to talk all things Aston Villa on this fine Wednesday. This show is sponsored by Luke Roper. If you want to get 20% off everything Luke have to offer, including this t-shirt, if it is still available, just use the code TVV20 and you'll get 20% off everything they have on their shop. So yeah, go and do that and you help the channel out a little bit and you'll also get yourself some money off your gear. Jacob, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. Yes, had a week off.
Another one.
Another one. Sound like my granddad. He doesn't think I do anything. Had a week off, still doing a few bits and pieces, but it was good that some signings got announced on Monday. So some of the things that we've been working on finally went out. But yeah, very busy time at the moment, and hopefully the next 2 weeks, people will see why.
Yeah, I mean, I had a week off as well last week, but mine was due to COVID rather than any holiday or anything like that. So apologies, there was no content last week. I was in absolute bits. I felt quite appropriate, really. You know, Villa have kind of gone back to COVID times in signing Ross Barkley. I decided to go back to that time myself and take a trip down memory lane, and it was not very pleasant. So yeah, apologies for the lack of content. Back now. Also, so to explain what we're doing today, Jacob and I are going to have a brief look at transfers and what's been going on, and then we're going to look at the announcement of the ticket prices that came out the other day. That obviously have caused a little bit of uproar on Twitter. But Kevin Hatchard and myself are jumping on Friday. He's a European football expert. He's going to give us the lowdown on all Villa's new signings that we may not know as much about. Bundesliga expert as well, so he'll have watched plenty of Maatsen last season. So looking forward to doing that on Friday. So we're not going to concentrate too much on transfers on this show, but we will start with them. Jacob, obviously Villa have a revolving door at Bodymore at the moment. Plenty of players coming in, plenty of photo shoots, plenty of opportunities to show off the new Adidas training gear. They're all kind of signings that actually we have spoken about many times on shows that we knew were coming. They've all come through the door. We've had to wait till July to see them. But what's your overall feeling of how Villa are kind of started to revamp and shape their squad?
Yeah, I think they've done pretty well considering the circumstances. We knew how difficult everything with PSR would be until June 30. It meant for a mad dash. It meant selling players that they didn't really want to sell. And I think the thing that got them over the line, the transfer that got them over the line, was Amari Kellerman. He was a player that, I was making checks on Kellerman, up to about 5 days before the transfer went through. And there was a real doubt that he would even go. I think there was a lot of people saying that he's definitely going to stay. He was going to go to the US with Emery. Was going to try and hit the ground running. I think they wanted him to stay around the first team, play a lot more games this season. But I think ultimately they realised that as part of the exchange deal, John Duran wasn't going to be the paperweight as such for Ian Maatsen. Sets to find someone else. And Chelsea, like Kellerman, and reluctantly Emery and the board had to sanction that. So that was the only real disappointment from really. I think he's a really good signing. I'm surprised at Chelsea. They've got a lot of players like him. And as I said, if there's one blot on Emery's copybook, is that young player that are coming through. And I personally thought Kellerman was probably the most likely. So that's the most disappointing part. But in terms of incomings, really excited about a lot of the players. I think Illing Juniors, I think, will add great depth, really good wide option. Ross Barkley, we spoke about him before. I think he's a different player. I know a lot of Villa fans are quite reluctant. They saw him the first time. Maybe I did because I didn't. Maybe I'm a bit more optimistic. But I think he'll be a really good signing in the holding midfield. And Maatsen's a high class European caliber left back who can play other positions. But I think he's upgraded the squad basically, and that's what Villa need going into the Champions League next season. Just
quickly on Illing Jr., where do you think he's been brought in to play? Because he played a lot of left wing back football for Juventus last season, so it's kind of like now Villa got 2 new left backs. Could Illing Jr. play as a straight left back? I guess Emery's system is ideal for these 2 players, but then where does that leave Moreno and Luka Dean? Because I imagine it would be hard to shift both. Or do you think Illing Jr. has been brought in to be a winger?
I think he can play both. Genuinely, I wouldn't be surprised if Moreno and Luka Dean both leave, or one of them leaves. Because there's interest in them, and it would help Villa considerably in terms of balancing the books even more. So I wouldn't be surprised with both of them. I think he'll be an option at left back, left wing back. Defensively, his numbers were really good last year. I think he improved immensely. I think he's quite reliable there. But he did have Danilo and Alexandro behind him, who were dueling into position, and Ed obviously played a back five, so they had extra defensive protection. I think left wing back in possession is exactly the same as Aston Villa. I think there's no problem with the ball. Off the ball is probably the issue. But I also see him potentially replicating a Leon Bailey, left-footed coming in off that right as well. I think he'll add a lot of depth, and we're forgetting Lewis Dobbin as well, who's another player who can play across multiple positions. Quick, goes in behind, and I'm not going to say he's going to be a star next year. I think he's coming as a deal of convenience, to be honest with you. But at the same time, he does have depth and more than what Villa had at some stages of last season.
Kind of look at Dobbin as being a replacement for Kellyman in some ways. I think Kellyman would have appeared more had he not been injured.
Yeah,
I think we'd have seen more of him. So I'm kind of looking at him as being a direct replacement. I know they're slightly different types of player, but I'm looking at them as being replacements. You mentioned Emery and the use of youth. In his defence, he's probably reluctant to do it because he knows if he uses anyone, they're probably not going to be here next season anyway because of the stupid rules. So I can kind of understand his resistance to use the younger players because obviously that you're vulnerable to them leaving because of the homegrown stupid PSR rules.
Yeah, completely, and also where Villa are as well. The gap for the young players to make up is huge, so they've got to be special talents to even get there. Same time, there were examples last year. Hibernian in the second leg when the tie was already done, and he just chose to bring on Ollie Watkins and John McGinn at half time instead of a Tommy O'Reilly or whatever. You just think maybe those are the times or games where he puts two goalkeepers on the bench rather than a academy player. You think maybe. If I'm being picky, that could be the time to really put a young player in. But, who am I to criticize Unai Emery? And also, at the same time, like you say, these players have to be fantastic to even get into the squad under Emery.
He's going to have a job at Chelsea as well. Absolutely stacked. And Carney Chukwuemeka has made appearances, but he's had a lot of injuries as well. But, you must look at that if you're Kellyman and think, well, he's probably not even got in for double figures for games in a couple of seasons. At Chelsea, it's going to be difficult, but I imagine, the financial rewards will be big for him making that move. But £19 million is, I thought Chukwuemeka for 20 was extortion. I think 19 million for Kellyman maybe is worse because his body of work is less.
Yeah, and also no one really knows the type of player he is. He's played a few times. He's played obviously a lot of under 21s games, under 18s games, but he's not really had that much game time at first team level. And if you had to say, what's his best position? You'd probably say number 10, maybe coming off the right as a floaty winger, but no one particularly knows. And I think he's trying to find himself as well. And I think he's the type of player that's very elegant. I think there's a few people that are bearing comparisons to Kai Havertz in terms of quite languid, quite tall, rangy, great touch. But at the same time, like Havertz, you probably don't know his best position yet. So it might take a few years to work out. And the problem with Chelsea is you don't want to get lost in the system. There's a lot of players that, when I was covering Southampton that went to Chelsea, they're still knocking around the under 18s, 21s. Like you say, Carney as well. It's a big profile. Had times where he was in the first team, but the competition was huge, and the academy is the most competitive and unforgiving in the Premier League. So Kellyman's got a job on his hands, but he's got a really good attitude, good mentality, and I wish him the best.
Yeah, look, it is a shame. Obviously, no one wants to see young players that are trying to develop at the club leave, but we are where we are with PSR. And in fairness, I've mentioned his pathway at Chelsea. There's a lot of players for him to get past at Villa as well. It would be difficult to break in at Villa. Villa are a Champions League team. Actually, Chelsea will be playing Europa League, so perhaps they'll, or they're playing conference. I can't remember which way around it is, but perhaps those players have actually, in a way, got more chance of being blooded in Europa ties rather than Champions League at Villa. They're probably not going to get a look into. Actually, I've changed my mind as we've been talking here. Maybe it's a good move for Amari Kellyman. Obviously, we're not going to go into the new signings in detail, but I was driving to London yesterday, and as I often do, I start to think about it, and I start to think how line up. As it stands at the moment, how would we line up? And I'm trying to work out who would play central midfield on day one at the moment, and I came to the conclusion that it would probably be Barkley, and I think I settled on John McGinn in the end. Barkley and John McGinn in the middle, and perhaps Tielemans as a number 10. That was how I saw Villa lining up in central midfield at the moment, with Bailey on the right, Ramsey / Rodgers on the left, and then you're giving the newer players a little bit of time to blood in those that haven't played in the Premier League before.
Yeah, I think obviously pre-season will dictate a lot of who starts these games. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Yuri Tillemans and McGinn are the stopgap for the first couple of games. Obviously, Baron Cheers still just come in. Ross Barkley as well. I would be surprised if he sticks with Tillemans and McGinn in that double pivot, and then because you've got so many options in the more advanced areas, it's not ideal. But at the same time, I would have completely ruled out another centre midfielder coming in either. So
Okay.
that could dictate plans as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because let's say it's Tillemans and McGinn on day one, which is every chance it would be. I would think because Barkley's kind of ready to go in terms of Premier League football, I would think he'd come straight in for Louise. That would be my theory. But then we're hoping Ramsey's going to be fit at the start of the season. I'm really excited to see him next season. And then I started to think Ramsey on the left, Rodgers as a number 10 off Watkins. But then I started to think, how far's Diaby down the pecking order here in my head if we've got players missing, and then I'm putting 2 number 10s ahead of him.
Yeah, I'll be surprised and I'll be interested to see Ramsey and Rodgers in the same team. I think that it's either one or the other. I think stylistically you can only have one of them. Yeah, I think they're very similar, and I think things might become a little bit stodgy if you play both of them because you need variation, and that's where or how important Moussa Diaby is when he's on form because he offers something different. His pace offers runs into the channels. I think he's a player that has to hit the ground running. He did exactly the same last year as well. Started really well. I think 1 year under his belt, I think will be really good for him. And at the same time, you don't know how Leon Bailey's going to come back either. So, Diaby, I wouldn't rule him out at all. Yeah, I think I would be surprised if he starts the season as well. He's going to have a full pre-season under his belt, which is key for him. And it's going to be pre-season's going to be interesting to see. I think the tour to the States is when players will really make their mark. The younger players don't know if they're going yet, so I think they face quite an anxious time until they reconvene for pre-season on July.
Yeah, we'll talk about this afterwards. We won't talk about it on air, but I've heard a couple are going. So I've been told. Conflicting sources here, conflicting information, Jacob.
Yeah, maybe some have been told, but others might haven't. I think it's a big squad going, and whoever go will be part of the plans. And there's even talk that some players will sign loan deals, but they won't go until after the States, just so they've got a few weeks of being exposed to Emery style.
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes complete sense. It's going to be. The players are back next week. Am I right? In
July 8th.
I think July the 8th. They're back next week. Obviously, those that are on international duty will not be back. Of course, Conser and Watkins will be preparing for a Euros final. I'm sure, so they won't be back. God, England. I don't even want to talk about England. I did it for 2 hours yesterday on TalkSport, and I don't think I can put myself through anymore. But just quickly. Think Conser will play?
I'm actually writing a piece on that today. I think he will play.
Yeah,
I think he will play, but I do fear for him because I really want Conser to play. But he's going to play left side centre back. He's not played this. He's not played this. It's 2020-21 season. And given that England, let's not go on England too much, but given England have a big issue playing out of pressure, Conser being awkward on the left side of centre back, trying to progress the ball, just frightens me. And it's not because of him. It's just the way that England play. Personally, if you're looking from a cold point of view, I might go Lewis Dunk because he's better breaking the press from left side of centre back. But at the same time, and also the thing is though, England sits so deep that you don't need to worry about Lewis Dunk's pace. Conser's.
I'm worried about it still.
I will go Conser, but I do worry if they hanging out to dry left side of centre back.
Conser might even be left back here. Trippier doesn't play. I know they've looked at that in training. So God help him. But good luck, Ezra. Good luck, Ole. I do actually think England haven't faced anyone of any really real quality yet in this tournament. And I think Switzerland will. I've predicted 1-1 Switzerland to win on penalties. That's what I think.
Can't wait for that.
Might happen. Yeah. What did I want to ask you? Just whilst I've got you, people would be fuming with me if I didn't ask you about incomes. You've just referenced maybe you wouldn't be surprised if Villa did get another central midfielder. Obviously, the Gallagher links are still there. But now we're into July. We can forget about PSR, hopefully. What are you expecting from Villa in the next month or so?
Outgoings. Dendoncker, Eva Moreno, Luca Dean, Diego Carlos is still a big opportunity. Goalkeeper as well. John Duran. I think that could go on forever, John Duran. Is he going to go? Is he not going to go? If he stays, you're going to have that till January as well. So I think I expect outgoings, but then the same time, I think you can look at centre backs coming in. I know they were linked to one yesterday. From my understanding, I think that's quite misplaced. And a goalkeeper as well. I think Robin Olsen. I think Emery won't stand his way if he wants to leave and get some first team football at this stage of his career as well. So I think outgoings might be the order of the day, and if they can move on a Dendoncker, Cameron Archer, I think that would be fantastic for Villa.
It's going to be really hard to move some of these players on in the current landscape. It really is. People like just expect that Dendoncker will just go, Carlos will just go. I'm not sure that they will. I'm not sure they.
No.
Carlos, for example, I'm not sure he'd want to go.
No,
It is not going to be easy. And then if we don't move players on, you're hamstrung because you can't bring in the replacement really, because you have to keep them in the first team squad for harmony and the wages that they're on and things like that. It's very, very difficult. It's going to be an interesting month or so. But we could find that Villa are keeping some of these players till the end of August that they don't really want. But yeah, that's going to stop them from bringing people in. It is going to be.
And also,
really interesting.
You probably play the first couple of games and you think, okay, this guy's not getting many chances. This guy actually is coming into the team. So that might dictate what they do in the last few days of the window. You've still got Courtney House. You've still got some of the younger players as well. I should say it's difficult. And the market's not there. Cameron Archer, for example, last year, there was 3 or 4 clubs lining up for him for good money. And this year, obviously, the cupboard's a little bit more bare. So, yeah, I think Monchi's done really well in terms of the juggling for PSR. Now we move on to the other part, which is really refining the squad.
Yeah, I don't know whether you were part of it, but there was a brilliant article on The Athletic explaining like Villa, Newcastle, Forest, Everton, everything they've had to do in the month of June and why they've done it and how they've done it and what the likely end goal is at the end of this. And Villa are okay now, I think. But yeah, it's really, really interesting read to look at why the clubs had to do what they had to do and how they got there. It was definitely a fascinating last few days at Newcastle and Forest as well. I think with some of the transfers that went on, it really is PSR stuff is just absolutely mind blowing at times. But I feel like I've learned something. I feel like I've got a better understanding of it going into my summer at Sky now. So that's good. Right then, let's talk ticketing. A bit reluctant to do this. I will say that I have probably not been as nuanced as I could have been on social media over the past month or so with decisions that the club have taken off the pitch. So I'm going to try and be a little bit more balanced today, but I'm finding it hard because I see a lot of things that I don't agree with. I don't want to sit here and hammer people at the club and hammer the club, and we're going to try and look at reasons why they're doing what they're doing. But I find it very difficult to justify some of these prices that I'm seeing in front of me here, Jacob. But just as more of a, as a more professional person than me and more of an outsider to Villa and ticketing issues than me, what are your thoughts on what's going on? Because we've seen now Villa have kind of announced their general admission prices. We could forget season tickets. We've done that, and I've done that on social media. What have you made of the match day ticket prices now outside of season tickets?
Yeah, there was issues last year with ticket pricing, right? The Aston Villa Trust came out with a statement, which I don't think there was much response forthcoming from the club to that. I think they increased it by 15% in season ticket prices last year, but given inflation, that was in line with other clubs. I think only 3 other clubs froze season ticket prices last year, so there was always going to be an increase, and again this year as well, there's always going to be an increase. But the length and the extent its increase is, unimaginable. And obviously I'm not in the best place to talk because I'm extremely fortunate to not have to pay for the season ticket. I'm not a match going fan. I don't, I'm lucky to work as a working capacity, but at the same time, I look at what's happening regarding ticket prices, off the field decisions, and fundamentally, I think you do worry for whether they're taking into account the match-going fan and the legacy fans. I think Villa, obviously, of course, they want to improve. And commercially, they're making big strides. Commercially, they're trying to. Anyway, they're putting a lot of people under a lot of pressure to make big commercial strides. They're putting things out regarding prices of sponsorship, and I think some of the numbers we've seen reported elsewhere are quite inflated. So there's still a necessity to improve revenue to compete. And at the moment, Villa are reaching a bottleneck situation where they're trying to improve so much off the pitch, trying to get as much revenue as they can to make sure that it matches what Emery's doing on the pitch. But at the same time, it can only go so far because Villa Park's only so big. you can only expand it so much, as we saw last year with the rebuild being postponed, and that was a big issue. So there's going to be a boiling point at some point, and maybe we've reached it or we are approaching it. But at the same time, I think Villa need to, not forget the fans that were there and that have been there for a number of years, not just new people that have come in or want to see Champions League football next season.
Look, I'm one of those people that's been there for, I think I'm going into my 32nd consecutive season. A season ticket is actually saving me money. If you look at the prices on a game-to-game basis, if you do the math, I'm saving money now on my season ticket. But the rise in my season ticket over the last 2-3 seasons has been massive. I think the 21-22 season, I was paying around £540. Now I'm paying well into the 800. So there's been a big rise. I'm paying for my own season ticket. My dad's an over 66. He's got his season ticket as well. But people who are families that have sat, and there is lots of families that sit where I sit. Families of 4. They're not just changing the zoning; they're changing how they bracket fans in terms of age groups and things like that. So some people's rise over the last 3 years has been absolutely huge. But we're not here to talk about season tickets, as I said. I've already done that. So if I look at my seat, for example, I've just said I'm saving money on a per game basis. My ticket is in the Holt End K4. I'm classed as price zone 2 for a category A game. It's £72.50 for an adult to sit in that area if they manage to get a ticket on a game-by-game basis, and that's pretty much the entirety of the Holt End. A lot of the Trinity and a lot of the Doug Ellis will probably fall into that category. I look at it and I think over 66 under 21 30 is £54.50 for a category A game. Armed Forces 58, under 18s 37, under 14s 22. I'm not really sure what I make of that. I don't know if that's good pricing or not. But what they've done is they've moved people out of seats that they've had long term to fit these blue seats in. So basically corporate seats. If you look at that, some of that's £92 flat. Some of the grounds now price zone 1, £78 flat. There's no concession. So whatever you do, whoever you are, whether you're armed forces, you're a pensioner, you're paying £78 if you want to sit in price zone 1. Some of that feels a bit overzealous to me.
Yeah, I think you had the similar situation, as I said earlier, last season when people were getting moved out, or the lower grounds came in, and it was an area for fans. Now all of a sudden it becomes hospitality. Lack of communication regarding that. I think it only kicked in the Crystal Palace game last year, when the meeting, it was only 15 minutes long, and I think it was described to me as quite an inadequate amount. So I think fans are obviously annoyed with the pricing, but they're also annoyed with the lack of warning, I guess. And if you look at the last 10 years as well, I know inflation and the world's a very different place from now compared to 10 years ago, but Villa's season ticket prices have risen by 91%, which even when you compare it to other clubs, it's astronomical. So I think generally we can say that category A prices have increased by 15% and category B have increased by 10%. So that's quite extortionate, regardless of the pricing and whether what you make of it. And Champions League, the numbers are there, and it's another increase on last year. So I think what concerns me from the outside looking in is that it's just going to be a case of every year they're going to keep putting prices up, and eventually they're going to squeeze out match-going fans, and they're eventually going to say, only supporters that can afford this go. And you might not be the match-going fans that have been there for years. You might be, earning a lot more money somewhere else in the country, and you'll be able to go and afford a ticket. So I think the demographic threatens to change considerably. But also, I've had emails come through from fans. I'm not going to read out this guy, but there's one that he's a gentleman that sits in the Trinity Road end, and he was putting out a category A fixture for him will be £72.50, and if you add that overall to his season ticket, it's around over £300 more than what he was paying last year, and the discrepancy is obviously significant there. And he's sort of extremely worried about the strategy that Villa are pursuing in terms of the increase in prices, but also at the same time, he's fearing. He says to me at the end, he fears that potentially for regular tickets at some point, as I said with the bottleneck, prices will reach £100, and the direction we're going certainly suggests that.
So last season, my girlfriend and her two boys, I paid for them to come to a game. It was the Tottenham game, so it wasn't a great one to have chosen. But obviously, look, I pay for my season ticket. That's separate. To get them 3 tickets in the Holt End, which is obviously where I sit, and I wanted them to be as near me as possible. The only way I could do that was to buy season ticket resale seats, which the club kind of manipulate themselves. There was no concessions there. So from what I remember, that cost me around, I think it was £62 a ticket to get 3 people into one game on top of what I've already paid for my own season ticket there. These prices aren't too dissimilar to that. Discounting season ticket holders again, people who want to go to 5-6 games a season, the rise there is extortionate because you'll probably only be able to, let's say you want to go to a game, you'll probably only be able to go in prize zone 1 or 2 if you want to go to a big game. Because you won't be able to get tickets in the cheaper zones because people won't be able to afford it. And what you're saying is about the match day, the match day fan, the genuine Villa fan. Okay, they might not have a season ticket, but everyone supports Villa in their own way. Everyone does what they can in terms of supporting the club. If you want to take your family of 4 to even 3 games a season, you're not far off a season ticket 3 years ago.
Yeah,
in terms of price.
Well, I think Villa's argument would be that there's a demand there, and they can reason for the ticket price. If there's demand, of course they can put the prices up, and given where Villa are, then and they're watching premium football, elite football, then you can understand an increase to some extent. But at the same time, maybe there's the fact that they're kind of preying on how big the club is. The number of people waiting for a seat on the season ticket list. 30,000 last year. They might think, okay, if some don't want to pay for their season prices this year, we're guaranteed to fill that seat anyway next year, and we'll do it with an increased price and people that can pay. So, as you say, those Villa fans that haven't got a season ticket but want to go to a couple of games, it's going to cost them an extortionate amount of money. And we add on to the fact that cup games as well. Last year the Everton Carabao Cup game cost £30 for a ticket, and I think they're quite surprised by the lack of numbers there. I think they realised that about the kickback, given then the pricing strategy for the 3 Conference League group games, which I think was a bit more reasonable. So the fact is, you're probably thinking, what are the incentives to keep renewing at increased prices? Are the facilities getting better? Are you getting cup games included? Are you getting FA Cup games included? The only upside is you're getting to watch Unai Emery Aston Villa. Because none of the other experiences are getting better. There's more hospitality areas. You might be kicked out your seat for a short period of time or a long period of time to see how things go. There's no stadium rebuild yet. What are you getting out of it? What is justifying that season ticket? I'll be really interested to know if fans get anything out of it. It's something that I've been looking at closely since I came to Villa, the off the field areas of improvement, and it seems to me that there is obviously an increase in price, but Villa fans need to justify paying that, and I'm struggling to see that other than watching Emery.
Yeah, and look, football's cyclical, so without being too morbid, we ain't going to be watching this football forever. And then what happens? Unai Emery leaves. I think he'll be here for a long time, but if he leaves or we have a bad season, you can't guarantee the football's going to be like it has been over the last year and a half. There's just absolutely no guarantees at all. And then you're asking people, you are purely, you're right, you're purely basing the prices at the moment on the fact that we're a good team. But that can change very, very, very fast. And I feel sorry for people because they are pricing people out. People will not be able to go. I feel tied in, like whatever they do with that season ticket in terms of price, I can't afford to lose that season ticket in my mind. And there'll be lots of people who feel the same way as me. I'm not saying I can't afford it or anything like that, but it's pricey.
Do you feel there's a pressure from fans, not just in your case, but others thinking, hold on, even if I just miss this year?
Yeah, you can't.
Because, for example,
you won't get it back.
No, my grandparents last year, they didn't get a season ticket again at Southampton because, they thought too many cup games at night might get a little bit cold. Really, we'll just buy on individual cases. But they always knew that even if Southampton got promoted or they wanted one next season, there's probably enough room for them to get one. Where Villa's different. If you don't get one for 1 year, you're off the list, I guess. Do you feel there is a pressure?
Yeah, definitely. Like my dad he's a pensioner. He
Yeah.
doesn't work, so he doesn't have an income. It's his pension, like everyone else of that age. His prices have shot up. I want Villa to be in the Champions League. Of course, I do. We haven't even touched the surface on what that's going to cost per game at the moment. There's a guaranteed 4 games in the Champions League that everyone is going to want to go to. On top of that, the prices aren't going to be cheaper than the prices that we're reading out now for a match day. They're going to be more, aren't they? Like at the best, they're going to be the same. But
Yeah.
so even 4 Champions League games in my seat, I'm looking at £72.50 per game. My dad's looking at £54.50 a game. It's a lot. It's a lot of money. I mean, Villa seem to throw the domestic cup, so we probably don't need to worry about that too much. But do you know what I mean? Like these things are all stacking up, and I don't want to sit here and hammer the club. I hate doing it. But we aren't in London. These are London prices. People in Birmingham do not get London salaries. However good the football is, you're stopping genuine Villa fans from getting to the ground, and you are prioritising maybe people who want a different type of product. Who I'm not knocking, because everyone, as I say, everyone supports in their own way. Everyone's different, but you're prioritising those people that can afford it over loyal people that would love to have a season ticket, would love to come to 4 or 5 games a season, and they're not going to be able to. And I get, look, the demands there. I understand that, but these are London prices. They're not Midlands, Birmingham prices.
No, and I spent a lot of time in London. I spent a lot of time in Birmingham, and you're completely right. And you can potentially justify it with Arsenal, Chelsea, these type of clubs.
Yeah,
And at the same time as well, stadiums are a lot better at Arsenal and Tottenham specifically. But I can, from a Chris Heck point of view, you can understand what he is trying to do in terms of he's got a remit to fulfill. He wants to bring as much money into the club, and for a lot of help through Emery and the Champions League, he'll be able to do that, and he'll be able to improve the numbers. And on the pitch, his work will improve Aston Villa. So you can understand that point of view, but at the same time, you do think, I'm doing a piece right now on Aston Villa's imperial age, Victorian age, and how they were one of the most aggressive, expansive clubs initially. When the Football League started, they were put a 25,000 seater in straight away, and they thought and they were trying to convince fans to go. And now it's the other way around. There's a demands are too big, and back in the Victorian times, it was just about workers turning up after a week in a factory, going on a Saturday as a form of escapism. That was what football's about. Now we're living in a commercial world, and what's Villa are doing are basically are moving with the times and moving into this commercial time. And we can all criticize Villa, but it's what every other big club is doing at the moment, which it's a sad thing. But this is not like Villa's in isolation. They're not the only team that are annoying fans. Even Wolves are big six.
There was a U-turn there, wasn't there? There was
a
U-turn at Wolves.
Yeah, but we shouldn't paint Villa as the bad guys in this when they're simply moving with the times.
I think they try and market themselves as a family club. We look after our own things like that, and I don't feel that this is. It does that. I should say as well, if you want to speak to anyone about the Victorian times, I'll give you my dad's number. He can give you a blow account of what football was like in the Victorian times, Jacob. If you need any help with your article, the other thing I'll kind of say with this, and you've touched on it, and you're someone that sits in the press box game by game. My price is going up. Fine, okay. If you can do what you got to do, if you want. My facilities aren't going up where I sit. You're cramming more and more people in. You're getting rid of more areas where I sit to enable people for the terrace view, for example. And I'm not knocking people that have taken up the terrace view, because if I didn't have a season ticket and I could afford it, I would be using that as a vehicle to get a season ticket. I'm not knocking those people. It's a simple thing of half time going to the toilet. Absolute catastrophe. It's not safe, really. Even being perfectly honest, they got rid of one of the big toilets to get the terrace view in. So they built a substitute toilet that's got six urinals in. 6. They've built a whole new toilet and it has 6 urinals in at the bottom of the Holt End upper. It makes no sense. And like I say, it's not safe. So you're actually making the facilities worse. I can't say that the food has massively improved. The different options that they do offer now, obviously the price is higher for those things. So I just feel like, although the prices keep going up for normal match day going fans and normal season ticket holders, for want of a better word, of normal. You're not improving anything. You're playing the lottery, essentially, that the football is going to continue to be really, really good. That is what Villa are doing with this.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Going back to the point of what are the incentives other than watching Emery's football team? Last year, when I was sat in the press box of Villa, a lot of people come up to me and we discuss obviously Emery in the first team, and then a lot of them would come up to me and say, "No, can I use the toilet in the press room?" Because sometimes I'm going down 15 minutes early just to make sure that I get there. You're missing some of the game.
That's not right.
I go to a lot of the other stadiums, the newer stadiums especially, it's a lot more spacious. Even, this is first world promise, but you can tell a stadium facilities by, the press room, but also the toilets as well outside. You look at Leicester, for example, spacious,
Oh, there. Don't even get me started on Leicester's training ground. One of the best places I've ever been in my life.
I know. And then obviously you go to Villa and it's like for a big game, it's crammed in, like very old fashioned. You think, I presume, I know from going around the other parts of the stadium, that echoes throughout every stand. So I think the most important thing now, obviously they've put the agreement and they put the price increase out, is to be creative, like they were with PSR, in improving facility they can. I know they've got a very restricted area. I know it's a very crammed area around Aston, but they need to make sure that facilities are better. They upgrade a certain in certain areas, and they make the match going experience more enjoyable away from what happens in the 90 minutes too.
Yeah, and I hate doing this. I don't like criticising the club. It's never been me. People who probably follow me on social media will say differently over the last few months, but it really has never been me. It's never been something that I've done. But I'm seeing Villa kind of get away from themselves a little bit, and I disagree with some of the things that they've done. And communication from the ticketing department, that's a whole different subject. That hasn't been brilliant around displacing people and things like that. I don't think the club have got a leg to stand on with that. I don't think they could say that communication from a ticketing perspective has been good. And they've got certain windows that we're calling people in, and people work. Some people can't answer the phone depending on what their job is. It doesn't look good, any of it. I don't think. Like I say, I hate being negative. People will say, "Why do you even care? It doesn't none of these things massively affect you. You should care about what's happening on the pitch." I care about what's happening on the pitch. Those are the things that are more important. But I'm just thinking back to people I've met over the years and thinking of people that I've known at the Villa who I know won't be able to go now. And I honestly think that's really sad.
Yes, and going back to the ticketing communication as well, there were times last year, I'm not sure if it's changed. If it has, then apologies. But I was speaking to people last year and how difficult it was to even phone up, the ticket office, how it'd be closed at certain parts of the day, how they wouldn't, get back to you, they wouldn't return your calls, you'd be waiting for ages. Even during lunch hours when supporters were trying to get calls, the ticket office wasn't picking up the phone, and yeah, it is a really disappointing thing. And I don't, for me, it's about being balanced, and I've been extremely effusive about what's happened on the pitch. I think, as I've said before in numerous podcasts, there's a real separation between what happens on the pitch and off the field. They're almost two different clubs, two different entities. On the field, it's high class. The coaching staff, the people around the first team are elite, and everyone's got very good things to say about them. I think off the field is where they have to catch up, not in only terms of increasing prices and making sure they're a big six, or the term that Chris Heck used, the Great Eight or something. They've got to make sure that they also stay true to Aston Villa's values of the past. And I know there's commercialization. I know there's an Americanism coming into football, but they need to stay close to Aston and the community. And I'm not sure who that person is, because whoever's best equipped to do that, who's from the area that has the ear of those senior figures. But they need to make sure they stay true to them, and actions, not words, similar to a politician, are always more favourable.
I just always think as well, the simplest way I can put it is that if Villa suddenly got asked for an extra £3 million to pay for a player, they'd probably do it if they really wanted that player. I don't see that this stuff that they do, people always say to me, we've got to do this because of PSR and to move forward financially, but it's a drop in the ocean for a football club, some of these things that they're doing, but yet it's killing certain fans, and that's the bit I don't like about it. And the biggest thing I can say, I know the club keep track of what I do and what I say sometimes. The biggest thing I can say is that, look, we are not in London here. A lot of the Villa fans, they won't earn anywhere near what people earn who support Arsenal, Tottenham, Chelsea. you're asking them to pay through the nose to do something that they really, really love. And I get the demands there, but we are not in London. The salaries are not reflective of London here, and people are going to struggle to do it. And I don't think that's right.
But I don't know who you really point the finger at, really, because, those senior figures that are on the ground, they're just carrying out the instructions, and really at the moment they're doing what or they're fulfilling the remit that they should do. Do you point the finger? Do you think this is an owner issue? Because you look at the stadium rebuild, there's a big issue with Witton Station, and Villa wanted one of the issues that Villa wanted the mayor and his team to pay for the station. At the same time, as you say, that 15 million, or how much it would have been, would be a drop in the ocean for the ownership. So the ownership have done really well. The senior figures have improved the club immensely in the last couple of years. Fantastic ownership. You do think, can you go that next bit and really look after the local supporters? And they say they will. So let's see that on that scale.
Yeah, I'm with you right there as well. It's hard, isn't it? Because the owners have been brilliant. They've saved the football club, and no doubt have lost millions themselves, ploughing their money. And it's the people underneath them that probably bear the brunt of people like me, who will obviously be quite vocal at times. I'd just love to speak to someone at the club. I think, like I said about communication around ticketing, I don't think they speak to people. I don't think they use the fab very well, from my experience of being in there and from stuff I'm hearing from people that are in the fab now. Just sometimes you just need to explain yourselves, and I don't think they're very good at doing that. But yeah, probably we can wrap it up. But yeah, it's difficult. There'll be people at the club that think it's difficult from their side, and it's difficult for the fans. I've tried to be as balanced as possible. I think talking it through with you rather than doing something on my own has probably helped in that respect. So thank you for talking to me today. As I've said, we'll be back on Friday. Myself and Kevin Hatchard running the rule over Villa's new signings. His knowledge is immense, so he's probably forgotten more about football than most of us will ever know. So Kevin Hatchard will run the rule over Villa's new signings on Friday with me. Don't forget to use the Luke discount code TVV20, gets you 20% off everything that Luke has to offer. Jacob, I thank you very much. Thank you to Adam for producing as well. Let us know, let both me and Jacob know on social media what you've thought about what we've said around ticketing, your opinions, your experiences. It'd be interesting to get some feedback. Obviously, comment on the YouTube video as well. I don't know what time this is coming out, but well, obviously, I don't know why I'm saying that, because obviously you've watched it if you're listening to me speak now, so it's completely irrelevant when what time the video comes out and when we tweet. But yeah, do get in touch with us on Twitter. My DMs are open as well, so anyone can. Jacob's as well. Yeah.
Can I just say, obviously, this is a topic that's a lot of people have opinions on. Some will agree, some will disagree. Yeah, as Dan says, if anyone I would love some feedback. I would love to get fans' opinion on a range of opinions. I don't mind if you think I'm talking absolute nonsense.
Yeah,
you agree with me or you don't. I just like a constructive feedback, and that'll be great.
Yeah, look, and we're trying not trying to hammer the club here at all. That's not the intention at all here. Just trying to talk around it. We're probably in a unique situation that Jacob speaks to a lot of people, and yes, I work in the media, but I'm a season ticket holder. Like, I've been one my whole life. I don't know any difference. So these things, although they might not directly affect me, I've got an experience of them. So yeah, do get in touch with us if you've got something you want to get off your chest, or you think we're talking rubbish, or you agree with what we're saying. It'd be interesting to kind of get a feel of what's going on here. So yeah, thank you ever so much for watching or listening. Do all the things that help the channel. Subscribing, liking, reviewing on audio platforms is really, really helpful at the moment. And have a great rest of the week. Speak to you on Friday.